We are live. Okay.
Every Wednesday, 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Today we're talking about
The X Factor.
co-ability. Did I say it right?
No, no, we're just talking about the X Factor, and I'm
The
gonna
X
say
Factor.
what it is because there's people that are disagreeing. I already got a UFC veteran who's more of a wrestling base, and he wants to argue with me about this. But he has to train guys right now. But I can set up a private like a online live chat with him.
I mean, I can. So you're allowed to have one guest at a time. So I mean, if you contact him, you send him the link, you send me. I can go and he can jump in. You can argue with him all you want.
Yeah, but he can't. I don't think he can do right now.
Okay.
He's teaching, but so not everybody agrees with this. The question here is, what is the X factor in martial arts? Like in baseball, all the skills you have, that would probably be the most X factor skill, right? Because that will get the points out. Like and then if you were in basketball, it would be able to put the ball in the hoop. That's the X factor. Yeah, dribbling and defense, all that's important, but the X factor is putting that ball in the hoop. You know what I mean? So, what's the X factor? What is the X factor in martial arts? So that's what I started coming up with. Um, after watching the last UFC, like what is the X factor for martial arts? And I think the X factor in all of martial arts is the ability to knock someone out within a split second. I mean, it's a knockout, right? So if you're gonna knock someone out, you just touch your chin and they go to sleep. Like the guy behind me, Ernie Shavers, not the greatest boxer, not the greatest. He didn't have the greatest skill, the greatest form, the greatest technique, the greatest, but he had the X factor of being able to knock people out. Muhammad Ali said he was the most adept knockout puncher that he ever faced. So, with that said, that's an X factor right there. And I think that X factor carries over to all of martial arts because it's the fastest way to win or lose a fight, right? You win it if you hit them with a hook or hit them with a somewhere on the chin, and you lose if you get hit on the chin. So I think it is the X factor. What do you think about that?
Well, I have a few questions I prompted myself with. I guess so. You're talking about striking. So for someone who doesn't come from like, and not to say they're not a strong base striker, right? Because it's not like it used to be in the old UFC days where you had
Right.
someone who was strong at one thing like jujitsu and strong at one thing like striking. Everyone's kind of a little more balanced nowadays.
Right.
But for someone
So
who
listen.
is
Okay.
looking,
Here's to answer that. Like not to answer that. You can ask the question, but here's a good one. The best wrestler ever in the UFC was George St. Pierre, who never wrestled a day in his life until he started training for the UFC. Okay, the one of the hardest knockout punchers in all of UFC, one of the this devastating knockout puncher was an Olympic level wrestler that never trained in striking arts, Dan Henderson. So that's what I think. So, but with that said, I still think the number one X factor in all of martial arts is the ability to put someone to sleep instantaneously, right? Instantaneously. What do you think? What's your questions?
so yeah, so oh yeah, anybody watching, if you have any questions about this or any comments, or even if you disagree, John loves it when people disagree with him because he loves to talk to you about that kind of stuff. So even if you disagree, you're welcome to throw your comment out there. So while I'm waiting for someone to say something, no one said anything yet. I'm sure they will. They like to wait till we're about to go. So I guess so. You're saying you're saying that you're kind of saying I don't want to put words in your mouth. You're kind of saying that striking a KO through striking is the X factor. Is the X factor something that would you say is the best technique?
I think like in baseball, right? The everything, it could be tied, and the defense is about the same and everything. One home run changes everything. One knockout punch changes everything. One, shoot in the basket and it goes in the basket, that takes care of everything, right? So the X factor to me is is a technique or a whatever that will change the whole game like that, whatever game that'll be. And some people might call it like a lucky punch. They might call it a lucky punch, or I mean that I don't ever hear anyone saying that's a lucky submission, but I hear a lot of people saying that's a lucky punch because it's the X factor.
All right. So what do you say to someone who would argue with you that the X factor would be someone who has stronger grappling skills versus striking skills?
When you say grappling, what do you mean specifically? What
Okay,
part?
specifically. So I'm glad you asked. So what would the X factor look like for jujitsu versus judo versus wrestling? If we're talking about someone who's a little more of a has a stronger base in these styles, what would the X factor look for those three people? Like someone who does. We'll start with jujitsu. What would someone who does Brazilian jiu-jitsu, what would their X factor be?
But when they're fighting someone else, the X factor would still be the ability to knock the other person out with a strike. So I'm not talking
Okay.
about a martial art like the sport jujitsu or sport wrestling or even sport, boxing. I'm talking about the X factor of martial arts. When I say martial arts, it includes all martial arts all put together. So you could take it out and say what's the X factor? It'd probably be a position in a certain position in jujitsu, because then you can do this, this, and this. In wrestling, it's going to all revolve around the takedown. So it'd be this or that. But I'm talking about martial arts, not martial arts. So when I talk about martial arts, it includes every martial art and a fight in a cage or in the street, not in a ring and not in a mat. So if you're strongly a jujitsu fighter or martial artist and you rely more on jujitsu, that's great. The X factor in martial arts is still one touch on the chin.
So what about those people that argue that a really good judo or especially on the street? Now we're gonna step out of the cage real quick and just go because you mentioned street real quick.
Yeah.
So what about those people that would argue that someone who's really good at judo or wrestling can just grab someone and drop them on their head on the concrete? Wouldn't
Right.
that also be a
That would
factor?
if you took a stopwatch and it went to hundredths of a second, it would take you probably just a fraction of the time to hit him with one hook than it would to close the distance, change the level, get a hold of them. You have to be able to get a hold of them just right, and then make sure they don't separate their hips. Now you pick them up and slam them. That's a great way to knock someone out. It's a great self-defense move, but there's so many variables on your way to getting it, where an X factor of a strike is bing, it's done. It's done in a split microsecond. It's not going to take all these different bits and pieces moving it together. Level, distance. Then you have to get your hands on them without getting hit. Without getting hit, and then from there you have to be able to get their hips, pop them up, and then you get it. And if you get it, it's a great technique. But to get a slam versus getting a one strike to the chin, I think the X factor is still the one strike to the chin.
So we have our first question coming in from John Cox. If you could only have one submission, what would it be?
One submission, what would it be? I'd say a guillotine.
Guillotine. All right, there's your answer, John. John. Oh, that's confusing. there's your answer, Mr. Cox. That does not sound good. All right, either way, there's your answer, buddy. Guillotine. The guillotine would be your number one submission. Now, here's another one. Well, no. If you have more questions about the X Factor, or even off topic, like you said, I'll just throw them in there. And you're watching, all 8 of you watching. Any questions are on the board. We don't have to stick to the subject. We love to go on side rants. But so you were saying it takes longer to set up your tackle or set up your slam than it does a knockout punch. So I guess now my next question would be, how is this different between boxing, kickboxing, and karate? Right? I know you said it's not styles, but if you're coming from one of those styles, you're gonna have certain techniques that you use that other people don't use. So like, what would our X factor look like then?
I think it would be the same thing. It would be, I think it would be the KO ability. So the ability to KO someone, I call that KO ability. And I'm gonna actually, don't try to use it, guys, because I'm gonna copyright that. The difference would be, since most KOs are going to be with a punch, okay, somewhere with a kick. So if you add up, if you allow for that, then I don't know how that would go. But I would be willing to bet the majority of knockouts are with a punch. The majority of punch knockouts are with a hook. Karate doesn't do hooks. Kickboxing doesn't do hooks well. So I would say, if all is said and done,
oh, you just X factored your phone, man.
I get a little carried away. I think it would be boxing. Boxing would be I think they would have the advantage in that. So I could argue it so many different ways and say, well, boxer, you just start kicking them, or you start wrestling them, and they don't have as much takedown defense, or you can start doing this. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about the X factor. When you do the X factor, you have to take into consideration that everybody else has equal skills in every art. So with somebody having equal skills in all arts, the left hook is still going to be the quickest way to end a fight, no matter what else you put on the table. The left hook is going to be the KO, the ability to KO someone, will be the number one X factor in all of martial arts. What else we got?
All right, so we have a comment coming in here, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time because sometimes the handles aren't, it's hard to pronounce this. Ashley Bautista or Bat. Okay, I'm just going to stop right there. Ashley Batiste. I still went there. Sorry, Ashley. Your comment is, the X factor in MMA is and was performance enhancers, if you ask me, or attributes. And now we're talking about MMA.
Yeah, and okay, I'll give you that. You could also say a hidden knife in your glove would be an X factor, right? Or if you brought in a gun into the cage, that would be an X factor. Or if you put a cast on your hand instead of hand wraps, that would be an X factor. Or steroids. But here's the thing, they're all equally illegal. They're all illegal. So you can't even, they shouldn't even be discussed, because they're illegal. It's cheating. So you could say, well, you could knock them off faster with steroids, right? I could knock them off faster if I brought in a knife. They're both illegal. So they shouldn't even be. I mean, they can't even be counted put into that equation because it's
It,
illegal.
it's funny that you mentioned the cast because I remember there was this guy out here, one of the smokers that I fought in, and he was just KOing like one guy after another. He once took on 2 fights on the same card, knocked both guys out, and then I had to fight him on the next in the next tournament, and he had some crazy knockout power. He didn't knock me out, but then they found out later he was using the cast the whole time. So like after like 4 or 5 knockouts, they finally found this out. But since they never explicitly put it in the rules, he he got to keep those KOs. I know it's a side rant, but yeah, a cast under your glove does go a long way. So again, going back to our X Factor, I have one more point. Actually, I have a few more points. Oh, wait. EPO gives you the ability to fight harder and longer. Oh, so another comment from Ashley, and that goes
Yeah,
along
I mean,
under the
not
same.
really. I mean,
Oh,
EPO is good for endurance activities like ultra marathon, marathons, Grand Prix, the Grand Prix of bike racing and shit. Um, it's great for that because it does it does build up and you get your hemoglobin packed and you got more oxygen carrying capacity for the long run aerobic for the aerobic exercise. But fighting is so intense and it's so anaerobic. EPO doesn't help as much as steroids do because steroids are more now and dynamic, where EPO is more for the long aerobic, type activity. Like I said, like a marathon or one of those bike racing Tour de France and stuff like that. So that's mainly where EPO goes. I don't know why anybody would be stupid enough to risk EPO for MMA because it won't make that much of a difference as much as steroids do, and you're gonna get in the same trouble. Take the fucking steroids instead if you're that dumb and that desperate and that much of a cheater. Take steroids. You get more bang for the buck, bro.
so
But
that's don't take steroids. That's all
okay,
I
no,
say. Don't
yeah.
do
I
it.
mean,
Just don't do it. But so here's another comment. Ashley says thoughts on Rampage claiming Wanderlei and Ninja used EPO. Oh, too late. But but yeah. What are your thoughts on Rampage claiming Wanderlei and Ninja used EPO?
I don't think they use EPO. I think EPO, like I said, it's a long distance endurance thing. The way they built, especially the way Vanderlei was when he was in Pride, like 230, 240, then he came down to UFC and they monitored him and he couldn't do the steroids. He came down to 185. So I think they were using straight up steroids in Japan because I saw their testing practices and they weren't really. It was pretty easy to beat the system when it came to steroids. That's why everybody was known to be doing steroids in Pride, and then when they came over to UFC, look how different they look. Everybody from Alistar to Vitor to Vanderlei, they all their physique just changed like almost overnight because of the steroids over there. I'm not saying they're wrong to do it because I think it was legal back there for the most part.
Yeah. 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 God love the
USADA.
USA. Yeah.
USADA. That's what the testing company is. So USADA tests for steroids
So, all
sometimes.
right. So, 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 if I'm understanding you correctly, you're narrowing it down. The co-ability is down to the left hook.
No, no, no. I think that's the. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think in sport fighting, um, I think most knockouts come from punches. I think. I've looked at it. I've looked it up, and I think the most common punch for a knockout is the left hook. So that's where I get that. and that's why I
Okay.
say that. So, I mean, head kicks are beautiful. They're great. It feels great, but there's not as many head kick knockouts as there is punches knockouts. And it's just a fact. Don't hate on the messenger. It's just a
Yeah.
fact.
No,
Yeah.
like just yeah. So the articles that come up are 225 knockouts coming through punches, right? When they're looking at the numbers, 225 ended by knockout through punch, and then 138 by submission, right? So like there's a big disparity between being knocked out and majority are coming from punches. Now, so again, we're not you're saying punches. We could say that a straight, a counter, any type of counter punch, but of
Any
course the
punch.
left hook is
I think
common.
I think that a left hook causes more knockouts, but probably in the street the overhand right does because people aren't. It takes longer to practice and perfect the left hook. Where a right hook, a lead or a power side hook is much more common in a street fight because it's the most. It's like Dan Henderson. It's the most. It's just the most common punch to throw with power, right? Like if someone threw you a ball, you're not going to grab it with your non-dominant side and then throw it with your non-dominant side forward. You're going to grab it from your dominant side, put that side back, and then throw it because you get the most power there, right?
Yeah,
It's common sense. I don't know.
yeah, and again, even after the left hook, what follows is usually your other hand. So like now, my last question for me, and then again, if any of you have questions, there's 8 of you live watching. Any of you have questions about this? Now's the time because we're getting to our wrap up. We're getting to the end here. So if you have any questions, throw it out there.
Don't be scared.
Um, don't be scared. How do you develop KO ability? Co-ability.
I
How do you
think
develop that?
it's.
Because some
I
people
think
have it, some people don't.
yeah. It's. I think it's a concoction of things. One being power. When people say he has a power, not he has KO power. Um, there's a lot of that. They just hit really hard. But most people finding the chin is the most important thing. Having the power to knock him out, yeah, you do. But you could have all the power in the world, hit him on the cheekbone, and then you hit somebody else hits with half the power right in the chin's going to do more damage. So it takes power. It also takes focus, and it takes timing, and it takes speed. It takes a bunch of different things, but most people rely on saying he has knockout power. They don't say he has knockout speed or he has knockout distance or knockout timing, and that all comes into play. And when you put those things together, you have KO ability. Yeah,
All right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
just
you
came
better
up with that.
trademark
I just
that.
came up
Like
with
right
that.
after we finish this, you got to go straight to your patent attorney and trademark that. Okay, so we have one more comment coming from Ashley. Um, I suffer from mental health. I have issues socializing at the gym and going out in general. Do you have any tips? I'm delusional, but I train my whole life by myself. What tips do you have to train for someone who has a hard time? It sounds like social anxiety. This is like under my wheelhouse of psychology. But if you want to give a crack at it, John, what's your advice with someone with social anxiety that has a hard time dealing with people but still wants to train?
I think the what came first, the horse or the wagon. I think the confidence that you get from training will help you immensely in all aspects of your life. So, but to get there, you got to train. So I say you just gotta find a gym, step into a gym like I did when I was 10 years old, where I knew this is it. I love this place. I love the energy. I love the people. I love everything about it. You just have to find that gym where you get people you can get along with, and then the confidence will build from there. And once you get the confidence, I think your other problems will, if not go away, they'll definitely get smaller.
Yeah, and again, coming from my background in psychology, especially if you're dealing with social anxiety, you're gonna want to take increments. Of course, it's gonna be hard for you to jump into a giant program with like 20, 30 people. So maybe start small. There's lots of different martial arts programs out there that even offer private lessons. So maybe where you want to start. Start with a few private lessons with just you and instructor, so you can tell them your issues, and any good instructor is going to help you work with this. Also, check out the time of day. If you're scared of being around a really big group, I during the day there's less people. You can find the times where there's less people, so you can kind of work your way into a bigger group, which would be one of the things I would throw out there. We have another one coming in. Every time, man, we're gonna go. Everyone wants to ask us stuff. All right, but thank you for joining us. We're still gonna answer your questions because that's how nice we are. Oh boy. I'm just gonna butcher every name I see, John. I'm just gonna say that ahead of time. Lima Walae, probably said that wrong. I keep hearing the word knockout. Is this the highest achievement in martial arts? I
Yes.
say no. I invoke the art of fighting without fighting, to use your mind and your spirit to avoid violence.
That's great. It sounds great. It's a great tagline, and I love it. But unfortunately, the bad guys out there, they don't follow that rule. There's bad guys out there that you can try to be nice to them, you can be friendly, you can try to avoid a fight. There's bad guys out there that want to fight, and they will fight no matter what. They will attack you, attack your wife, attack your kids, attack your family, attack your community, attack you. There's people like that do that. So with that said, when they attack you physically, what are you gonna do? You're gonna talk to them? Are you gonna cuddle with them? What are you gonna do? The 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 quickest way to end that is to knock them out. Period. There's no other quickest way to stop it. Once someone's attacking you and you feel your life is in danger, not they're drunk and they just got their hands on you. If they are intent on trying to kill you, you have to defend yourself and stop that threat by any means possible. And the quickest way to do that, the most effective and efficient way to do that is to render them unconscious. You can't argue with that. You just can't. Try.
So yeah, and even Lima came in and said, I've had the unfortunate experience of having to use my skills to defend myself. Fortunately, I've more often used verbal judo to diffuse bad situations. And I think again, what we're getting at isn't saying we're not saying that you just go up to people and start knocking
Yeah.
people out that you don't like. I think we talked about this last time about the ice cream, right? Like they gave you the wrong flavor of ice cream and you're knocking
Yeah.
out you're knocking out guys at the
Here's the
ice cream
point.
shop. Like we're
So
talking about.
he was able to use verbal judo, and that's great. But when you can't, what are you going to do? I mean, you can't always, you just can't always do it. So I think a band aid is better than going to an emergency room and getting a trauma surgeon, right? I'd rather put on a band aid. But what if, so you can't go around saying, well, the band aid's better. Why do you need to go to the ER and go to a trauma surgeon? What if you get into a fucking head on motorcycle accident and one of your arm is hanging out? Are you going to get the band aid then? Verbal judo is like a band aid, and knocking them out is like a trauma surgeon. I wish we never needed a trauma surgeon, only a band aid. But unfortunately, sometimes we do. And if you need that fucking trauma surgeon and they're not there, the band-aid's not going to work. But if you just need a band-aid and you have a trauma surgeon there, guess what? You'll probably be fine without it. So it's a tough one to weigh, but I like people to say that, when they, verbal judo, that's great. But a band-aid's good too. What about the guy that doesn't want to hear it? He just wants to punch you in the face. Bang. We good?
So almost. I got two more comments, then we're gonna go.
Yeah.
And Leva, thank you so much for commenting. I used the wall. I didn't throw a punch. And for the record, I do believe in striking first. I love you guys. Well, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. that warms my heart.
Yeah, I love that. We love people watching, and we're out there. We're here to make everybody a better martial artist. If you just got to think about stuff. Sometimes I've been in martial arts since 1970. That's a long time. But sometimes I'll watch something on martial arts or philosophy or something, and I'm 63 years old, but sometimes I'll learn something from some guy that's half my age about a martial arts technique. So I'm always learning and always hoping to grow, and I hope you guys do too.
I think we're wrapping up here. Every Wednesday, 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I understand not everybody has, all the time in the world, but if you can join us, the world can join us. Okay. Last one. I promise. They always do this. wait. One more time. Would you say a left straight for a southpaw? If you're a southpaw, a left straight, because we were talking about earlier.
Depends.
It's the same thing, right? It's the same thing. The dominant hand.
Yeah.
If you're southpaw, it's going to be the same.
I think they're very close, but I think left hook or right hook for you southpaws is a little more effective in a street fight than a straight punch is.
But a straight punch is the most common, as we talked about last time. The big wide haymaker is the most common.
Yeah, but a straight punch is more like a karate guy or a straight boxer or something like that, trying to win on points. Usually when people go in for the knockout, a lot of times you'll hit him with a straight punch, but the majority of the time when they want the knockout, whether it's a professional boxer, professional MMA fighter, or in the street, they're going to go to hooks. And there's a reason.
Okay, well, we got to go. D, thank you for joining us. First time tuning in. It's SP from Facebook. I appreciate you. 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We are live for 30 minutes from 5 to 5:30 every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
We've been doing it now for a few weeks now, almost a month now. We have to have our anniversary soon. Get a little cake.
People are loving it. Well, if you got any questions, let us know. Hit me up on Instagram, Pit_Master. I'll answer any questions you DM me.
Yeah. So if you're watching this video and it's already done, and you're like, I want to ask a question, go ahead and approach John. He's very approachable on Instagram or Facebook.
See you guys.
Catch y'all next time.
All right, brother.
Take care.
Oh, am I shutting this off?
I think I'll end it right here.
All right.